Night has settled in gently. As the lights soften and the familiar sounds of the day slowly fade away, I sense the world beginning to slow down. There is no longer much to finish, no one waiting for a response. There is only a quiet deep enough for me to listen to the rhythm of my own breathing. I lie here and let my breath move a little more slowly. The pressures of a long day do not need to follow me into sleep. What remains unfinished can be set aside for now. I do not need to try any harder, and I do not need to remind myself to be strong. In this stillness, I remember that while people rest, God is still at work. He does not need my alertness to continue His purposes. He does not sleep, and I am free to let go without fear. Some things in faith are not loud and do not become clear right away. Yet in moments like this, when everything grows quiet, faith is gently and steadily sustained. He gives sleep to those He loves. Psalm 127 verse 2. So I choose to rest. No more worrying, no more self-blame. I am simply here, in peace, knowing that I am not alone tonight. I want to recount a very ordinary moment from today, a moment that, if I hadn't stopped to think, I might have let slip away like so many other times. In the evening, after everything was done, I returned home with a familiar feeling of weariness. Not the kind of weariness from the body, but weariness from the fact that so many things in my head hadn't yet settled down. I began to tell a few small things that had happened during the day. Nothing major. Just work, a short conversation, a fleeting thought that bothered me. I told it out of habit, thinking that sharing it would lighten my heart a little. The person opposite me was still there. Still sitting in the same room. Still nodding a few times. But my eyes kept glancing down at the phone in my hand. I realized it so quickly that I didn't even have time to feel sad. I continued speaking, but my voice slowed down. I chose my words more carefully, omitting details. Perhaps you've done that too, right? When you start adjusting your words just so as not to bother others. Only a few minutes passed, but something inside me was slowly falling. I spoke softer, then shorter. Then I fell silent. No one asked me to stop. No refusal was spoken. But I knew, somehow, my story was no longer being fully heard. I wondered how many times in my life I had been silent like this. Not because I had nothing left to say, but because I felt perhaps what I was saying wasn't important enough for anyone to stop. The moment wasn't dramatic. No tears. No anger. It was just a very familiar feeling creeping into my heart, a slight but persistent sense of self-pity. I sat there and wondered if I was asking too much. Was everyone as tired as I was? Everyone with their own worries? I started looking for excuses for others' silence, while forgetting my own feelings. I realized I'd gotten used to carrying everything alone. Used to telling myself it was okay, it was just a small thing. Used to swallowing back unspoken thoughts. But the truth is, each time, my heart grew heavier. No one saw. No one knew. And perhaps I didn't even want to admit that I needed to be heard. There's something strange about our faith life. We believe that God cares about the big things, but we doubt whether He pays attention to the small things in our day. I used to think that way. I thought God was busy with the world's big problems, with more urgent and pressing prayers. Perhaps my trivial matters didn't need to be brought before him. But in that moment of silence, a Bible verse suddenly echoed in my mind, very softly, very clearly. The Lord is near to all who call on him. Psalm 145 verse 18. I didn't try to analyze it. I just left it there, as a reminder that God's closeness doesn't depend on the size of my problems. I began to reflect on how I had lived that day. I had tried to be strong. I had tried not to bother anyone. I had tried to keep everything inside so that things would seem okay. But was that really how God wanted me to live? Was faith about always appearing okay, or about being honest about my weariness? Perhaps you are in a similar situation. You still fulfill your responsibilities. You're still present. You still smile. But when you speak, you're not sure if anyone is truly listening. And gradually, you learn to be silent. I don't have immediate answers to all of that. I only know that this feeling is real, and it's here, very close, very clear. As I sat in that silence, I began to realize something I had previously avoided. The feeling of being ignored didn't just come from others, but also from how I treated myself. I was used to telling myself I was okay, that those little things weren't worth bothering about. But the more I tried to ignore it, the emptier I felt. Perhaps you've been there too, knowing you're sad, but not allowing yourself to be fully sad. I wondered why such a simple moment could touch me so deeply. No one yelled at me. No one flatly refused me. It was just a fleeting glance. But that very thing made me begin to doubt the value of what I held in my heart. I wondered if my story was too small, or if I wasn't important enough for anyone to stop and listen to the end. Those questions weren't loud, but they repeated themselves steadily, slowly, like tiny drops of water falling into my heart. I recalled how I had lived for the past few days. I worked, I fulfilled my responsibilities, I tried to keep everything in order. On the surface, everything seemed fine. But inside, I was accumulating so many unspoken things. I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. I didn't want to be seen as someone who constantly complained. And gradually, I chose silence as a way to protect myself. But prolonged silence didn't make me stronger. It only distanced me from myself. There was a moment in the night when I lay there and noticed I was breathing very shallowly. It wasn't because I was worried about anything specific, but because I hadn't truly allowed myself to rest. I was still trying to control everything, even after the day was over. I suddenly remembered a Bible verse I'd read many times, but tonight it resonated in a different way. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. 1 Peter 5 verse 7. I realized that I believed that verse intellectually, but hadn't lived it with my heart. I began to wonder, if God truly cared about me, why was I afraid to bring these small things to him? Why did I think that only strong, clear, faith-filled prayers were worth hearing? While sighs, mixed emotions, and unanswered questions were held back. Perhaps I had inadvertently set a standard for myself, a standard God never asked for. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that what I truly needed wasn't more listeners, but learning to properly place what was in my heart. People might get tired, distracted, or unable to stay with my story. But God is different. He isn't limited by time or attention. He doesn't need me to speak better, more profoundly, or more concisely. He just needs me to be honest. I thought about how Jesus lived on this earth. He stopped with each person, even when a crowd was surrounding them. He listened to very simple, very ordinary words. And I suddenly realized that I didn't need to compete for his attention. I didn't need to prove that my sadness was justified. I just needed to come closer. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11 verse 28. That verse requires no other condition than coming. But before I could truly find that peace, there was one more thing I had to confront. It was the fear that if I spoke my mind, if I admitted that I needed to be heard, I would appear weak. I was used to maintaining a stable, steady image. I feared that revealing my weariness would disappoint others. And perhaps, deep down, I also feared disappointing myself. I lay there and thought about all the times I had listened to others. I had tried to be present, tried not to judge, tried to stay. But I also remembered that there were times I hadn't. I had been distracted. I had listened but not truly listened. Realizing this didn't make me feel better, but it helped me be less harsh on myself and on others. We are all finite. And that's why we need an infinite being to rely on. In that train of thought, I began to feel a little lighter. It wasn't because the problem was solved, but because I stopped fighting my emotions. I allowed myself to acknowledge that I needed to be heard. I needed comfort. And instead of seeking it from places that might disappoint me, I began to turn my heart toward where it never turned away. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34 verse 18. I didn't pray aloud. I didn't arrange my words. I just whispered to myself that I was tired today. I had tried so hard, and I needed to rest. There was no outburst, no immediate, dramatic change. But there was a very slow calm, like the surface of water after the wind has stopped blowing. Perhaps you are hearing these words and recognize yourself in a similar state. You are still doing everything right, but inside you are longing for someone to truly stop. I don't know your specific situation, but I believe that feeling is not unfamiliar to many of us. And I also believe that God does not take such moments lightly. He doesn't wait until we fall to listen. He is there even when our sorrow has no clear name. As the night continued to pass, I felt my heart begin to slow down with my breathing. I no longer tried to find answers to every question. I just was there, in quiet presence, and allowed my faith to be gently supported. No noise, no pressure, just knowing that I didn't have to carry it all alone anymore. As that calm lingered with me a little longer, I began to realize I was no longer trying to control the night. Before, even when I lay down, my mind was still racing, still organizing, still reminding myself what to do next tomorrow. But now, everything slowed down very naturally. I didn't force myself to pray in the right way, nor did I try to find any particular emotion. I was simply there, with God, in the quietness I had avoided all day. I realized that I often brought to God things that had been carefully chosen. I chose my words, my emotions, as if I needed to present myself beautifully for Him to listen. But tonight was different. I brought my silence, my feelings of being ignored, even my unanswered questions. And what surprised me was that I didn't feel distant at all. On the contrary, I felt very close. You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. Psalm 139 verse 1. That Bible verse came to me not as a grand declaration, but as a truth that had always been there. In that presence, I began to look back on the day with a different perspective. I no longer blame myself for being sad, nor do I try to excuse the silence of others. I see more clearly that everyone carries their own burdens, and sometimes we are not strong enough to be fully present for each other. That doesn't make my sadness disappear immediately, but it prevents me from letting it define my worth. I am not abandoned. I am simply human. I wonder how many times I have longed for others to fill the void in my heart, while forgetting that there is a place where I am always waited for. We easily seek validation, attention, and listening from those around us, and when we don't receive it, we begin to doubt ourselves. But faith reminds me that my source of security is not there. It lies in an uninterrupted, undisturbed, and tireless relationship. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore. Psalm 121 verse 8. I didn't hear a clear voice in the night. There were no specific instructions for tomorrow. But I felt a gentle reassurance that I didn't need to strain anymore. I didn't need to try to be heard. I had already been heard, even before I opened my mouth. That truth touched me more deeply than any advice I had ever received. Perhaps you are hearing these words and wondering if it's true for you. Does God really care about your small, jumbled, hard-to-name emotions? I used to wonder that, and I don't have a complicated theological answer. I just have this very real experience. The moment I stopped trying to prove it, I began to feel peace. Be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46 verse 10. The silence was no longer a frightening place, but a place of rest. I realized that healing doesn't always come with big changes. Sometimes, it comes from stopping self-blame for needing to be heard. It comes from allowing myself to be vulnerable before God. And in that vulnerability, I am not taken for granted. On the contrary, I am uplifted. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9. That verse didn't strengthen me immediately, but it gave me the right to rest. Tonight, I'm not promising myself that tomorrow will be different. I'm not setting a goal to live better, stronger, or less sadly. I'm simply choosing to believe that I won't have to face tomorrow alone. I choose to believe that the things I didn't get a chance to say today are still preserved. And I choose to place them in the hands of the one who never lets go. Perhaps you are also in this moment, when the lights are out, when the world outside has quieted down, and you are left alone. If so, I want you to know that you don't need to do anything more to be loved. You don't need to speak better, understand more, or believe more strongly. God is not limited by attention like humans. He is there completely. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. Psalm 23 verse 1. I end this day not with all the answers, but with a very simple surrender. I surrender the unheard words. I surrender the feeling of being forgotten. I surrender myself. And in that surrender, I find enough peace to close my eyes. Not because everything is all right, but because I know I am being kept safe tonight, and that is enough. May in this final moment of the night, I and those who are listening remain in the gentle presence of God. May everything that has just been laid down in this prayer continue to be kept safe and silently acted upon by Him, even as we fall asleep. I believe that God is still working tirelessly through His grace and faithfulness. I ask for God's cover upon each mind and heart in this quiet night. May His peace dispel any remaining anxieties, and may His support keep us safe in His light. The Lord gives strength to His people. The Lord blesses His people with peace. Psalm 29, verse 11. In this rest, I offer all my prayers before God, in the name of His Son, trusting that they have been heard and kept. As I close this day, may I be completely in God's hands, safe, loved, and led into the new day in unchanging peace. If this prayer remains in my heart, I choose to hold on to that faith and let it continue to spread as a blessing tonight.